Aloha, everyone. Welcome back to the Hilo TCBES Professional Internship Presentation Day event. We are going to welcome our first speaker of our afternoon session, Kawehi Lopez. She is going to be introduced by her mentor, Franny Brewer. Franny Brewer is the Communications Director at the Big Island Invasive Species Committee, also known as BISC. Franny has led the organization's outreach efforts since 2015. She is known for her extensive experience working in outreach and education and her passion about using social science to enhance community engagement in conservation actions. Please join me in welcoming Franny to the Zoom mic.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so happy to be here today. I'm so excited because I have the honor of introducing Master's candidate Kawehi Lopez today. And Kawehi is a Hilo girl and a graduate of Kamehameha Schools, but she's also a fellow alumni of Hilo. She graduated a few years after me, just a few, but she has her undergrad from Hilo in environmental science. And I first met Kawehi when she was in the PIPES program. She was interning for Stanford University. We were collaborating with a doctoral candidate there on a research project testing social science strategies.
Enter your meeting ID, followed by
encourage community action on invasive species. And at that time, this was a fairly new approach for Hawaii. So it was very new and kind of cutting edge, so to speak, in outreach here. So it was a really intense project. We were working sometimes 6 days a week, evenings, weekends. We were literally meeting with dozens and eventually added up to hundreds of people. And Kawehi was an undergrad intern, but she was amazing. Absolute flexibility. There was a lot of education for each of us on that project because we were all kind of in a new area. Even our social scientist was learning Hawaii and learning about our invasive species issues here. And so everybody on the team was a little bit in new territory. And when you're an undergraduate intern, that can be really disconcerting. And so just seeing Kawehi's amount of commitment and flexibility and consistency coming in every day, committed, prepared, enthusiastic, and really flexible. Like, okay, we're making an adjustment, we're making another adjustment, we're making another adjustment. And she was right there giving feedback, just making these invaluable contributions. So at the end of that summer, when she wanted to stay on the project, she's like, well, I could go into a kupu internship. We were like, yes, please come work for BISC and be our kupu and work on that. So she stayed with us to finish that research project all the way to the very end, right through into publishing. So when a couple of years ago, she approached me about going for her graduate degree in TCBES, I was, of course, thrilled for her, but when she said she wanted to intern with BISC, I was very interested in the opportunities for us, just knowing what an amazing job Kawehi does. So we put together a great plan to do more original social science research, and we were really excited and ready to move forward. And then small global pandemic hit. That has caused a lot of upset for a lot of folks, really derailed our plans. But once again, Kawehi just showed amazing flexibility, and we sat down and talked about, okay, well, we're not going to be able to do this social science project because it's very hard to talk face to face with people that you need to be 6 feet away from at all times. So what else does BISC need? You know, she really wanted to make a contribution, like not just check the boxes, but what can I do for BISC that's going to be valuable? And we examined sort of our outreach program, and she looked at gaps and said, yeah, I'm going to work on this and I'm going to fill this. So I'll let her talk about the specifics, but I just want to say that, you know, that's a really big deal when you're setting out on such a big thing as a graduate degree, and you're suddenly all of your plans are just ripped to shreds. To be able to bounce back from that and come with a positive idea and want to continue to make contributions, it was really impressive. So it's been such a pleasure over the last couple of years to work with her. And this final contribution that she's going to present to you folks today, this isn't, you know, tinkering around the edges. This is a really valuable, huge chunk of our outreach plans going forward. This is really going to be very foundational to our program in the next couple of years. So I really appreciate the work that Kawehi has done. And I want to Mahalo her for all the contributions to BISC and to our team and to me personally. I couldn't have had a more pleasant experience being a mentor. So I appreciate you, Kawehi, and I'm personally grateful that you're here, and I look forward to hearing your work today.
Mahalo nui, Franny, for that amazing introduction. It's been my pleasure to work with you over the past few years. Just hold on a second while I pull up my presentation. Let's see. How does that look for everyone?
Wonderful.
Right.
Looks good.
Awesome. So aloha mai kākou. I am extremely excited to talk about my professional internship experience with the Big Island Invasive Species Committee. I've titled my presentation, Shifting into the New Normal, Invasive Species Outreach in the Age of COVID-19. And the reason why I included a computer on this slide is because virtually all of the work that I did for my internship was carried out online. So I snapped this picture back in 2019 at our TCBES orientation. This was a week before our first classes started. This anuenue was absolutely breathtaking, and once I saw it, I was filled with excitement for the next 2 years ahead of me. At this point in time, I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted to focus on for my internship program. But as it turns out, these 2 years didn't play out as I had expected, and I was forced to shift my project plans due to the pandemic. If this experience has taught me anything, it's that I will never really know what kinds of obstacles I'll be faced with in the future. This olelo no eau, aya no ike ko akeo, serves as a reminder for me to live in the present, learn from the past, and do my best to prepare for the future. Before I dive into my presentation, I would like to go over a brief outline of what I will be discussing today. I will start off first with an introduction of invasive species in Hawaii, the organization that I worked with, and then I will discuss the importance of science communication. Next, I will talk about my internship experience, the projects that I worked on, and the deliverables that I produced. Finally, I will discuss the benefits that my work had on the organization, and also how these experiences have shaped my professional path moving forward. Invasive species are federally defined as organisms that are not native to an area and whose introduction causes harm in at least one of 3 areas: the environment, the economy, and human health. The state of Hawaii added to that definition to also include species that impact our way of life. Some of you may be familiar with these particular invasive species, such as rapid ohia death, little fire ants, and the invasive semi-slug, which serves as a carrier for the parasite that causes rat lungworm disease. Hawaii is home to a diverse array of native flora and fauna found nowhere else in the world. And unfortunately, this place is also considered the endangered species capital of the world. Invasive species pose a major threat to the native biota. According to a report published in 2001 by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, Hawaii has over 50 of the world's 100 worst invasive species. Whether introduced on purpose or accidentally, invasive species possess a similar set of characteristics. The first being that they prey on or outcompete native species for resources. One of the reasons why feral cats are so invasive is because they prey on native ground nesting birds. The second is that invasive species aggressively take over new areas. Fountain grass is definitely one of those species. If you've ever driven on the west side of Hawaii Island, you've definitely seen this plant along the roadsides. Invasive species also quickly mature and reproduce, and rats are a really great example of this. A mother rat can have as many as 8 to 12 offspring about every 30 days, as long as there is enough food, water, and shelter. And young rats reach sexual maturity at approximately 3 to 4 months of age. The last characteristic of an invasive species is its ability to transform landscapes. Rapid ohia death has decimated thousands upon thousands of acres on Hawaiʻi Island, completely transforming forests on Hawaiʻi Island. Those of you that live on the east side of the island are most likely familiar with this plant. Myconia is listed as a state noxious weed and is one of Hawaii's most invasive horticultural plants. It was intentionally introduced to Hawaiʻi Island in 1961, and by the 80s, it was clear that this plant was invading low elevation forests. One of the major reasons why Myconia is so damaging is because it forms thick monotypic stands, shading out native plants and also reducing the amount of rainwater that goes back into the watershed. Their seeds are spread by birds, and also their shallow root systems promote erosion, which degrades the quality of surface water and increases sedimentation of coral reef ecosystems. Before there was BISC, there was the Big Island Melastome Action Committee. It was formed in 1995 with the purpose of controlling the spread of Myconia. It wasn't long before they realized that getting rid of Myconia was going to require a considerable amount of time and resources. The plant was so widespread at this point, and it would be extremely difficult to get it under control. The reason why the response to Myconia was not effective was because there was too little resources, and frankly, we were just too late. However, the lessons learned from Myconia have informed invasive species management tools moving forward. I like to think about it using this invasion curve. So you have time on the x-axis and cost on the y. They always say that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and that is definitely the case when we're talking about invasive species. The earlier that we can detect and respond to an invasive increases our chances of eradication. This is where outreach comes in. Typically, most people become aware of an invasive species when its populations are widespread. It is up to us to use the lessons that we have learned to inform how we move forward. The Big Island Invasive Species Committee was formed in 1999, and their mission is to prevent, detect, and control the establishment and spread of invasive species threats to the Hawaiʻi Island environment, economy, and way of life. This picture was taken a few years ago at a staff retreat. The work done at the Big Island Invasive Species Committee focuses on various aspects in the fight against invasive species. We use early detection to seek out newly naturalized plant species along roadsides, and we also use drones to track and identify ohia trees that are potentially affected with rapid ohia death. One of our most recent projects, called Mamalu Poi Poi, focuses on monitoring for Africanized killer bees and coconut rhinoceros beetles at the Hilo and Kona airport. Our plant crew works hard surveying and controlling incipient plant populations or plants that are in the early stages of invasion. Plants like rubber vine, cotoneaster, and Moluccan raspberry are some of the plants that we work on. Hopefully these plant names sound unfamiliar to you, and we really want to keep it that way. BISC also serves as a field action team for a lot of the researchers that are working to address rapid ohia death. We collaborate with the U.S. Forest Service, the Pacific Basin Agricultural Research Center, and other agencies to inform the state's management recommendations for dealing with rod. One day, our crew could be collecting frass samples for pea bark, and another day might be spent collecting seeds for studies on ohia resistance. While invasive species are a threat to our native forest ecosystems, certain invasives also pose a threat to the economy and public health. And albizia is one of those. BISC focuses on addressing the impacts of albizia and works with stakeholders like the Department of Transportation and the Hawaii Electric Light Company to protect both infrastructure and public safety. And last but not least, we have outreach. We do all the typical things that you would think of when it comes to outreach. We create brochures and rack cards to educate the public. We visit classrooms and talk to students, and we also man booths at community fairs to talk to the public. But our outreach at BISC goes farther than that, as Franny mentioned previously. We collect data and use social science to inform our programs so that we can motivate the public to take action on invasive species. Our Little Fire Ant Community Support Program focuses on empowering residents to work together and treat for little fire ants as a collective. While our teams work to address all of these species that I've mentioned, I also wanted to point out how important it is to recognize the reality that new pests are continuing to arrive on our island. In 2002, the Hawaii Department of Agriculture performed a risk assessment on the movement of alien species from the continental US into Hawaii through the Kahului Airport on Maui. The plant quarantine branch conducted 7 3 to 4 week inspections between September 2000 and July 2001. I was in kindergarten at that time. And they looked at checked and carry-on bags and agricultural products that were shipped through air cargo. During those 130 days of inspection, the team intercepted 279 different species of insects, 125 of which were not known to occur in Hawaii. The fact that this study was done almost 2 decades ago means that this number has likely increased over the years. And while not everything arrives and survives long enough to establish and invade, there are a few that slip through the cracks. Here are some of the new invaders that BISC has recently begun focusing on. I want to note that our outreach approach differs from species to species. We are currently working to eradicate 2 new plants, devilweed and phonax, pictured on the top left and right corner. The outreach team is responsible for collecting plant reports from the public and relaying that information to our crews on the ground. The 2-line spittlebug was first detected in 2016 when a rancher in Upper Kona reported widespread die-off of his pastures. While the University of Hawaii's Cooperative Extension is leading the research on the 2-line spittlebug, our role at BISC is to provide them with guidance on conducting outreach with the public. For the semi-slug and rat lungworm disease, we take research from the Jarvie lab at Hilo and the STEM curriculum that they produced, and we deliver that to teachers through a professional development course. The Rami moth is fairly new to Hawaii Island and can decimate mamaki plants. Our role at BISC is to raise awareness about this pest by posting alerts and urging the public to remain vigilant. The Queens and Longhorn beetle is another new pest to Hawaii that attacks a number of different tree species, including kukui, citrus, cacao, and avocado. BISC became involved with QLB outreach after receiving a growing number of reports and concerns raised by farmers and other residents. So when it comes to outreach, many efforts utilize what is known as the deficit model of science communication, which operates by taking the science, disseminating it to the public, and increasing awareness around a topic. We utilize this traditional approach selectively at BISC. This is because with some species, we are looking for more action from the public, which requires a more targeted outreach effort. For example, this is the case with little fire ants. BISC created a community support program in order to empower residents with the knowledge and resources to control the ants in their own properties. Research has proven that information-intensive campaigns are minimally effective when it comes to promoting conservation action. And while these campaigns do serve an important role in outreach, when it comes to motivating long-term changes in behavior, we need something more. And so how can we motivate others to take action against invasive species? This has become an important question that drives the work that we do at BISC. Earlier, I talked about BISC's community program, which provides education and support for residents looking to control little fire ants. The creation and delivery of this program was informed by social science and serves to empower and motivate residents to work together with their neighbors to control LFA. My initial plan for my internship was to carry out a pilot study to better understand public perceptions on little fire ant control. My objective was to figure out how BISC could improve their program to better target the needs of Hilo residents. In order to gain a deeper understanding of those community needs, this requires talking to people. And since this project would involve a lot of face-to-face interaction, carrying out this effort was made impossible due to the pandemic. We are very fortunate at BISC to be recognized as essential workers and have been able to continue our field work throughout the pandemic. BISC has implemented new sanitation and social distancing policies, and our crews continue to work hard out in the field. This is a picture of Nate collecting a tree sample to test for rapid ohia death. Since the outreach team had to transition to remote work, my focus shifted towards strengthening BISC's digital presence. Since a lot of our outreach efforts at BISC consisted of in-person presentations and trainings, we needed to make sure that our resources were more digitally accessible. And to do this, we conducted multiple webinars through Zoom and streamed live on Facebook, which covered topics like managing little fire ants, reducing your risk of exposure to rat lungworm disease. I played an important role in the design of these presentations and also created social media posts to promote the events to the public. This is what our staff meetings look like now. We go over project updates and safety briefs, and although we can't be together in person, it's really nice to see everyone's faces and catch up every once in a while. So for my internship, I focused on 3 primary projects. The first was video production, the second was social media campaigns, and the third was a content creation guide. All of these projects gave me the opportunity to channel my creativity and learn more about conducting outreach in the digital realm. So for my first project, I created an 11-minute video depicting the work that our crew does out in the field. This video was made for the Ohia Love Festival, which usually takes place each year at the Imiloa Astronomy Center in Hilo. And this event is really important for us at BISC. In previous years, this event has seen over 1,000 attendees. Since this was the first year that the event was held in a virtual space, our team wanted to come up with a way to create and showcase the work that we do in the field. My intention for the video wasn't to inform the public on all of the different processes carried out in the field, but it was to serve as a source of inspiration for students and other individuals looking to work in conservation. My first step was to come up with a vision for the video and then create a storyboard. I decided to center the video around a set of interview type questions, splicing different video clips and pictures in between. I relied on the field crew to capture the pictures and videos for this project because I wasn't able to make it out to the field with my school and work schedule. This meant that I needed to meet with the field crew via Zoom to clearly convey my vision and my expectations for the video. Once I got all of the footage, I then worked on the editing. And while I had a little bit of experience with iMovie, I challenged myself to use a new editing software called Final Cut Pro. And this program wasn't as intuitive as I would have liked, so I spent a lot of time watching tutorials on YouTube. And after many hours of tutorials and editing, I finally finished the video. I created a promotional graphic to share on social media, as well as a 1-minute trailer. So this video made its premiere at the Ohia Love Festival week-long event. We hosted a live webinar on Zoom and Facebook. We showed the video and then we hosted a live question and answer panel with our ROD crew. This gave the team a chance to talk with the public and also give them a better idea of who they are and the work that they do out in the field. The event was a success, and we had about 77 people show up for the webinar. After showing the video, we did a question and answer session, which lasted around 40 minutes. If anyone is interested in viewing the webinar presentation, it was recorded and can be viewed on BISC's YouTube channel. And also, if you're interested in watching that 11-minute video, please check out BISC's YouTube channel. The next project that I focused on was social media. I worked on 2 separate campaigns. The first was Stop the Ant Month, which happens every October, and the second was Hawaiʻi Invasive Species Awareness Month, which takes place every February. This was the first time that these events were held in a virtual environment. And for those of you who aren't following us yet, I included our social media handles down below. You can find us on YouTube by searching BISC, B-I-I-S-C, and we're on Facebook at UHBISC and Instagram at Big Island Invasive Species. Traditionally, Stop the Ant Month would involve a bunch of community presentations and hands-on trainings. It also involved school visits and activities with students. And all of this was sort of off the table once the pandemic hit. So in order to keep these events going, we had to figure out what Stop the Ant Month was going to look like moving forward. I was designated as the organization's point person for Stop the Ant Month, which meant that I had to attend planning meetings and collaborate with people from multiple agencies and organizations across the state. Our main objective was to figure out how we can effectively deliver our messages in an online environment. From creating social media posts to posting blogs to doing virtual class presentations, we really had to figure out what this event was going to look like. I designed 23 graphics for social media and also managed the BISC Facebook and Instagram. I also worked with Jamie of the Oahu Invasive Species Committee to manage the Stop the Ant social media pages as well. Here are some of the posts that I created for Stop the Ant Month. I found it very helpful to look at our social media analytics afterward to see how our posts were performing. I noticed that certain posts would do better than others, and that differed between platforms. For example, I experimented with animated posts like the one on the top right. After looking at the analytics, I realized that while it performed well on Instagram, it didn't receive as much engagement on Facebook. Another thing that I noticed was that our followers on Instagram were of a younger demographic than those on Facebook. This ultimately meant that in order to drive up our engagement rate, we really needed to come up with targeted strategies for each platform. I took what I learned from Stop the Ant Month and applied that to my work for Hawaiʻi Invasive Species Awareness Month, or HISAM. One of the main objectives of this outreach campaign is to raise awareness of invasive species issues across the state. This event happens during the legislative session, which makes it a great opportunity to raise awareness and garner support for biosecurity and other invasive species legislation. Our outreach team decided to launch an interactive campaign called Which is the Worst, and we encouraged our followers to cast their vote for the worst invasive species on Hawaiʻi Island. The idea for the game had been suggested at one of the HISAM planning meetings, but no one really knew how to implement it. I decided to take on the challenge and thought it was a good way to engage people in conversations about invasive species. It would also create space for people to share their experiences and to make people feel like their opinions matter and that we're listening. Outreach is not a one-way street, and it's essential for us to be engaged in these conversations with the public. And in this day and age, people are having more and more conversations online. And as an organization, we have to figure out how we can cater our outreach to reflect that. So every other morning, 2 invaders went head to head, and our followers got the chance to vote for the one that they thought was worse. I used the polling feature on Instagram stories to make it easier for people to participate in the voting process. It also made it easier for me to track the results. On Facebook, I noticed that most of the voting took place within a photo album named Hi Sam. Individuals submitted their vote in the comments section. Other members of the planning committee were considering adopting this approach for future events, and so this campaign was closely followed by other conservation organizations. And while I was unsure of how everything was going to play out, this game turned out to be a hit. Throughout the month of February, BIS gained 137 new followers on Instagram and 61 new followers on Facebook. Here are some of the graphics that I created for Hawaii Invasive Species Awareness Month. All of these posts performed really well on Facebook and Instagram. Rapido death was chosen as the worst invader on Hawaii Island. And although putting this game on was hard work, I really thought that it was an effective way to connect with our audience. In addition to the game, BISC hosted 3 webinars throughout the month of February. I chose to create individual graphics to announce each event and made sure to include the Zoom links directly in the social media posts. We found this strategy to be very effective, and our webinars at BISC had the highest number of attendees out of all of the other webinars during the month. Other posts that performed well were memes and pest alerts. Social media analytics are really important in this regard because they provide data on what kinds of posts are resonating with our audience. And this really helps to inform our efforts moving forward. The last project that I focused on was creating a digital communication plan for BISC. I really wanted to take what I learned from the previous social media campaigns to create something that was going to help the outreach team moving forward. Before this, BISC had no formal social media plan, and so it was important for me to provide that structure. I figured I'd share just a few pages with you all to give you a better sense of what the document looks like. The first half of the plan includes an overview of basic principles of graphic design, as well as tips and tricks for working with Canva, an online graphic design program. One of the most important things that I learned from working on Stop the Ant Month and Hi Sam was that posts that do well on Instagram don't always perform well on Facebook. And so it's essential to understand how we can create targeted content that performs well on both platforms. I did a bunch of research on the Instagram and Facebook algorithms for 2021 and provided the team with tips on how to increase their engagement and reach. The last half of the plan consists of a content calendar for the rest of the year. I outlined the focus for each month, main outreach messages, and provided ideas for graphics and other forms of content. And the following page is a calendar to plan a monthly posting schedule. This living document provides a plan for creating and scheduling content throughout the rest of 2021. I wanted to touch on some other experiences that have contributed to my growth as a science communicator and outreach professional. Anytime that I was assigned a project for any of my classes, I focused on creating products that would be useful to the Big Island Invasive Species Committee. For my qualitative research methods course, I carried out a research project to understand how little fire ants were impacting surfers. I got to practice 3 different research methods, including interviewing, surveying, and participant observation. During my GIS course this semester, I've been working on creating maps that can be used to communicate with legislators. Our internship course with Lisa Connelly last semester was geared towards learning about new science communication tools. We got to create an ArcGIS story map, which allows you to build a web-based story with text, maps, and other multimedia content. We also got to learn about podcasting. I got to interview Carolyn Wong from the Natural Resources Conservation Service in Kamuela about her work on the 2-line spittlebug. I had a lot of fun working on this project and could definitely see myself making more podcasts in the future. I was also introduced to the world of TikTok during Lisa's class. And while I don't see myself creating a BISC TikTok account anytime soon, I do understand the importance of integrating short form videos into our outreach efforts. One of the coolest things about the RAD video is that it continues to be used by BISC for our school presentations and career days. This project also taught me how videos can serve as an important outreach tool. I was introduced to Canva at the beginning of 2020 and really used my internship to learn more about graphic design. Previously, the BISC team was using Adobe InDesign, but that program is expensive and didn't really allow for collaboration. And so I proposed that BISC discontinue using InDesign and switch to using Canva. Now it takes less time to create graphics and we can collaborate on projects more effectively. The digital communication plan that I created serves as a living guide for the outreach team and will inform their campaigns moving forward. And although my initial internship project plans changed due to the pandemic, I got the opportunity to work on projects that ultimately benefited the organization. And as my internship was coming to an end, I asked my mentor, Franny, if they had the funding to hire me on after graduation. Thankfully, and due to the hard work of our program manager, Springer K, they were able to secure funding, and I'm slated to start working full-time with BISC in July. They are currently in the process of developing a brand new position that will reflect a lot of the work that I completed during my internship. My experiences have taught me about the power of narrative, and moving forward, I'm really excited to hone my skills as a storyteller. Building off of that, my internship has allowed me to gain a deeper understanding of the value of photography and videography for conservation. And moving forward, I plan to learn more about digital media production. The last thing I have on this list is grant writing. And so this is something that I've been wanting to learn for the past few years, but unfortunately didn't get a chance to do that during my internship. Moving forward, I really look forward to gaining experience with grant writing. And with that, I'd like to give a huge shout out and mahalo to Springer, Franny, Molly, Jade, and the rest of the Biscuits for their support throughout my graduate school journey. I would also like to thank the Hauʻoli Mauloa Foundation, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, Kamehameha Schools, the Big Island Association of Nurserymen, as well as the Richard Smart Ohana for making it possible for me to obtain my graduate degree. Lastly, I would like to thank Lisa Canali for her guidance and support, and the rest of the TCBES cohort for their friendship over the past 2 years. Mahalo nui loa, and I would take any questions that you guys have.
Thank you, Kawehi. That was fantastic. So if you're brave, please feel free to unmute yourself. We have time for like one question before we're going to take a short break and bring on our next presenter. So, or if you're shy, you can type it into the chat. All right. So Kawehi, I do have a question for you, and it's related to the video production work. And so I'm wondering, in terms of that deep dive that you want to do with video production, like where do you see yourself going? Are you thinking about maybe making a short documentary, or like what's your vision for your video venture?
That's a great question. Thanks, Lisa. In the next few months, we'll be working on, at BISC, a new outreach campaign focused on providing the community with guidance on controlling common weed species. And so we're going to take a lot of the research that we've done internally and create content that's easily digestible by the public and really easy to follow. And so in the next few months, that's what I'll be working on.
So your mentor would like to know what is, in terms of the next big thing for communications and graphics at BISC, is there going to be, do you think there's an area that they aren't exploring right now that you would like to bring them into?
Thanks, Franny, for the question. I think that videos are really powerful in this day and age, and it's something that we could be utilizing more at BISC. And so when it comes to creating content, I think that we need to integrate more of that into what we do. It's a way to create more of a personal connection with our audience, and I think it's going to be really useful moving forward.